A third party planned your separation from the start. But one hidden result just exposed why they could never let your soulmate marry you. The reason is shocking. My beloved child, something was hidden inside this connection from the very beginning, and the truth is far more surprising than anyone expected. The distance between you and your soulmate may have looked like a series of misunderstandings, unanswered questions, and unfortunate timing, but there was another layer beneath everything. A third party had been quietly hoping the two of you would never reach the future you once imagined together. They noticed something about your connection long before either of you understood how powerful it could become, and that realization changed the way they behaved. Every time your soulmate seemed ready to move closer to you, another doubt appeared. Every time the possibility of commitment became stronger, another confusing situation seemed to arrive at exactly the wrong moment. But here is where everything begins to change. One hidden result has now brought an old truth back into the light, and it explains why the idea of your soulmate marrying you affected this third party so deeply. Don't skip, because what seemed like simple jealousy was connected to something much more personal. Your soulmate once said something about you that the third party never forgot. It was not a casual compliment. It was not a temporary emotion. It was a statement about the future. Your soulmate had quietly admitted that with you, life felt different, more peaceful, more meaningful, and somehow more real. Those words created a fear the third party could never openly admit. If your soulmate truly chose you, their influence would disappear. And that was only the beginning. There is another detail that makes this story even more surprising. The hidden result did not expose what the third party expected it to expose. Instead, it revealed a pattern connecting several moments that once seemed completely unrelated. A conversation that happened before your separation. A sudden change in your soulmate's behavior. A piece of information delivered at exactly the wrong time. And one question about marriage that made the entire atmosphere change. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. When your soulmate was asked what kind of person they could genuinely imagine building a permanent future with, they did not describe the third party. They described qualities that sounded unmistakably like you. Your energy. Your patience. The way you understood things without needing endless explanations. The way your presence stayed in their thoughts even during periods of silence. That answer changed everything. The third party suddenly understood that this connection was not something they could erase simply by creating distance. They could interrupt communication, encourage uncertainty, and make your soulmate question the timing, but they could not control what your soulmate felt when imagining the future. And then came the hidden result. Something your soulmate had kept private showed that even during the separation, they were still making decisions while thinking about you. That is the revelation nobody around them expected. The separation may have changed what was happening on the outside, but it never completely changed what was happening inside your soulmate's heart. And now the reason begins to surface. The third party was never simply afraid of losing attention, they were afraid of what your marriage would represent. It would mean your soulmate had finally made a choice that could no longer be redirected by outside opinions. It would mean the confusion had ended. It would mean the person they tried to push into the background had become the person standing at the center of your soulmate's future. Don't skip now, because the most important piece has not been revealed yet. There was one particular moment when the third party realized your soulmate's feelings for you had survived everything, and what happened immediately afterward explains why the separation seemed to accelerate so suddenly. Your soulmate unknowingly revealed something through one simple decision, something they believed nobody else had noticed. But the third party noticed. They understood exactly what it meant, and from that moment forward, keeping you apart became more important than ever. Yet there was one thing they failed to predict: the very distance meant to weaken your connection forced your soulmate to recognize what your absence actually meant. Something changed inside them when you were no longer as close as before. A truth became impossible to ignore. And the hidden result that has surfaced now points directly toward that realization. Stay till the end, because what your soulmate finally understood about you could completely change the meaning of everything that happened between you. The moment everything shifted was quieter than anyone would have imagined, because your soulmate did not make some dramatic announcement. They simply stopped responding to the third party the way they used to. Something inside them had changed. Questions they once ignored suddenly demanded answers. Why did every serious conversation about you somehow become complicated? Why did doubts appear whenever they started imagining commitment with you? And why did the third party always seem uncomfortable whenever your soulmate spoke positively about your future together? Don't skip, because your soulmate began connecting these moments, and one detail stood above everything else. Before the separation, the third party had learned that your soulmate was considering a future decision involving you. It was bigger than another conversation and deeper than temporary feelings. Your soulmate had begun imagining what life would actually look like if you became their permanent partner. That possibility frightened the third party because marriage would change the entire balance. Once your soulmate chose you completely, outside influence would become far less powerful. So uncertainty was planted around the connection, not necessarily through one obvious moment, but through small questions, carefully timed doubts, and repeated suggestions that made your soulmate reconsider things they had previously felt certain about. But something unexpected happened. The more distance grew between you, the more your soulmate began remembering who they were before all that confusion entered the connection. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They started comparing the peace they remembered with you to the uncertainty surrounding them now, and the difference became impossible to ignore. Then came the hidden result that changed their perspective. Your soulmate discovered that one important assumption they had accepted about you did not match what they were now seeing. Something they believed had influenced a major decision, yet when they looked at the situation again, the pieces refused to fit together. Suddenly, an old conversation sounded different. A certain statement felt strangely incomplete. Even the timing began raising questions. And here is the surprising part: your soulmate remembered that whenever they tried to ask you directly about certain things, circumstances somehow pulled the conversation away before everything could be cleared up. Now they were beginning to wonder whether the separation had grown from truth, or from confusion that was never properly resolved. Don't skip. This realization brought back something your soulmate had tried hard to silence: the memory of how certain they once felt about you. They remembered imagining ordinary mornings together, making plans, building something stable, and knowing exactly who they wanted beside them when life became complicated. Those memories did not disappear. They had simply been buried beneath too many unanswered questions. And now, one by one, those questions were returning. The third party could sense this shift too. Your soulmate was becoming harder to influence because they were no longer accepting every explanation immediately. They were observing, comparing, remembering. And most importantly, they were beginning to trust their own experience of you again. But the biggest revelation was still waiting beneath everything else. Your soulmate finally understood why the third party reacted so strongly whenever marriage entered the conversation. It was never only about losing your soulmate's attention. Your marriage would prove that despite every interruption, every period of silence, and every confusing chapter, your connection had remained meaningful enough to survive. That possibility exposed the third party's deepest concern. Your soulmate might eventually realize that the person they kept being encouraged to move away from was actually the person they could never emotionally replace. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate has now remembered one sentence the third party said before the separation, a sentence that seemed harmless at the time but sounds completely different after everything that has been uncovered. It revealed that the third party already knew how seriously your soulmate viewed you. They knew commitment was becoming possible. They knew your soulmate had started seeing you differently from everyone else. And most surprising of all, they may have understood before your soulmate did that separation would not necessarily erase those feelings. It could actually make them stronger. Stay till the end, because the next truth is connected to what your soulmate secretly did after realizing this, and that private decision may explain why the entire situation is beginning to turn in a direction the third party never expected. What your soulmate did next was so private that almost nobody around them understood why their energy suddenly changed. Instead of confronting anyone immediately, they went back through the memories they had been avoiding, the conversations before the separation, the moments when you seemed misunderstood, and especially the strange timing of certain doubts that appeared whenever your connection became stronger. Don't skip, because this is where the hidden results started making sense. Your soulmate noticed something astonishing. Many of their biggest doubts about you had not originally come from their own experiences with you. They had appeared after conversations with someone else. That realization made them question everything. They remembered how naturally they once imagined you beside them in the future, and how quickly that certainty became complicated whenever marriage was mentioned around the third party. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate began separating what they personally knew about you from what they had been encouraged to believe, and the difference was enormous. The person they remembered was not the person described by all those doubts. They remembered your presence, your consistency, your small gestures, and something you once said that had remained quietly inside them. Suddenly, the separation stopped looking like proof that the connection was wrong. Instead, it started looking like the moment when too many outside voices became louder than the two people actually living the connection. And once your soulmate recognized that possibility, they could no longer look at the past the same way. Then another memory returned, and this one struck even deeper. Long before the separation became obvious, your soulmate had apparently revealed something about marriage without realizing how significant it sounded. They had described the kind of relationship they wanted, not perfection, not appearances, but a connection where they could finally feel understood without constantly explaining themselves. And every quality they mentioned pointed back toward you. Don't skip now, because the third party heard enough to understand what was happening. Your soulmate was not simply attracted to a possibility, they were emotionally imagining a life with you. That was the hidden reason the idea of marriage became such a sensitive subject. If your soulmate chose you permanently, every doubt that had been placed around your connection would lose its power. But here comes the once-in-a-lifetime twist: the separation itself gave your soulmate the comparison they never had before. Without you nearby, they finally experienced what life felt like when your energy was missing. The silence did not erase you. It magnified the memories. Ordinary moments began reminding them of conversations with you. Future plans felt strangely incomplete. Even when they tried moving mentally forward, something kept bringing them back to the same question: why does the future I truly want still seem to include this person? That question became impossible to silence, because your soulmate was beginning to realize that distance had tested the connection in a way closeness never could. And now everything is approaching the revelation the third party never wanted your soulmate to reach. Your soulmate has started understanding that the real question was never simply, why did we separate? The bigger question became, who benefited from keeping us uncertain about each other? Something huge is waiting for you, because when your soulmate followed that question backward, they remembered one specific event immediately before the separation intensified. Someone had presented them with information about you, and at the time it seemed convincing enough to create hesitation. But now one overlooked detail has surfaced that changes the meaning of that information completely. The timing does not match. The explanation does not match. And most importantly, your soulmate's own memories of you do not match. Stay till the end, because instead of immediately revealing what they discovered, your soulmate made a surprising choice: they stayed quiet and watched. They wanted to see whether the same pattern would happen again. And it did. The moment they casually mentioned you, the third party reacted in a way your soulmate had never noticed before. That single reaction answered a question they had carried for far too long. Your soulmate finally understood that someone had been far more invested in preventing your reunion than they had ever admitted, and the reason behind that reaction leads directly to the biggest truth still waiting to be uncovered. The reaction your soulmate witnessed lasted only a moment, but it revealed more than months of explanations ever could. Your name entered the conversation naturally, and suddenly the third party's entire attitude shifted. Your soulmate noticed the pause, the immediate attempt to redirect the subject, and most importantly, the question that followed: why were they thinking about you again? That question stayed with your soulmate because it exposed something strange. If the separation had truly settled everything, why would simply mentioning you create such discomfort? Don't skip, because your soulmate did something different this time. They did not explain themselves. They watched. They listened. They allowed the third party to keep talking, and with every sentence, another piece began falling into place. The third party seemed to know details about your connection that your soulmate could not remember openly sharing. They remembered conversations, timing, and emotional turning points with surprising accuracy. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Your soulmate suddenly realized this person had been paying close attention from the beginning, especially whenever your relationship moved towards something serious. And then came the sentence that changed the entire atmosphere. The third party spoke about your possible marriage as though it had once been a real possibility, not some distant fantasy. Your soulmate immediately wondered, how did they know how close that possibility had actually become? That was when an old memory returned. Before everything changed, your soulmate had privately considered taking a meaningful step toward you. Very few people knew. Yet somehow, the third party's behavior had changed almost immediately afterward. What once looked like coincidence now looked completely different. Your soulmate began revisiting the hidden result with fresh eyes, and suddenly it revealed something nobody had expected. The result itself was not merely important because of what it showed, it mattered because of when it appeared and who seemed determined to shape its meaning. Don't skip. Your soulmate realized they had been given an interpretation before they ever had the opportunity to understand everything independently. And when they removed that interpretation and looked only at what they personally knew, the story changed. The shocking part was not that someone disliked your connection. The shocking part was how early they recognized its potential. They saw what your soulmate was slowly discovering: you were becoming the person they compared everyone else to. Your soulmate could disagree with you, become distant, even try convincing themselves that moving forward would be easier, but the emotional comparison remained. Nobody else seemed to create exactly the same feeling. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate finally asked themselves the question they had avoided for too long: what if I had spoken directly to them before believing everything around me? That question opened the door to another realization. The third party could influence conversations, timing, and perception, but they could never control what happened when your soulmate remembered you without anyone else speaking in their ear. In those quiet moments, your soulmate remembered the connection differently. They remembered why marriage had once crossed their mind. They remembered why losing you felt different from losing anyone else. And suddenly, the third party's strongest fear became clear. Because what frightened them was not simply your return, it was your soulmate making an independent decision. Once your soulmate began trusting their own memories again, the entire structure of uncertainty started weakening. Stay till the end, because the next discovery is the one nobody expected. Your soulmate remembered a promise they had quietly made to themselves before the separation, something they never told you and barely admitted to anyone else. They had decided that if they ever reached a point where they could clearly distinguish their own feelings from everybody else's opinions, they would reconsider the future they once imagined with you. That moment may finally have arrived. Don't skip, because your soulmate is no longer asking whether the third party approved of you. They are asking why your connection required anyone else's approval in the first place. And that change is enormous. The third party planned around uncertainty, but they never planned for your soulmate to question the uncertainty itself. They expected distance to close the story. Instead, distance created perspective. They expected silence to weaken the memories. Instead, silence made certain memories impossible to ignore. Now your soulmate has reached the one question that could expose everything: what exactly happened immediately before the separation, and why was the possibility of marrying you the one subject someone desperately wanted removed from the future? Something huge is waiting for you, because the answer leads back to one hidden conversation, and once your soulmate remembers who started that conversation, the entire story could finally make sense. That hidden conversation is where the entire story begins turning upside down, because your soulmate now remembers something they originally dismissed as insignificant. Just before the separation became serious, the third party asked a strangely specific question about your future together. It was not simply whether your soulmate cared about you. They wanted to know whether your soulmate could genuinely imagine choosing you permanently. At the time, your soulmate answered without understanding how much that answer would reveal. They admitted that despite the uncertainty, despite the differences, and despite everything that still needed to be resolved, there was something about you they could not imagine replacing. Don't skip, because immediately after that conversation, the atmosphere around your connection began changing. New questions appeared. Old misunderstandings suddenly became important again. Things that could have been solved through one honest conversation somehow became larger than they needed to be. And now your soulmate is recognizing the pattern. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The third party had discovered something they were never supposed to know. Your soulmate was not merely holding feelings for you. They were considering whether you might actually be the person they wanted beside them when temporary emotions were gone and real life began. That possibility explains why marriage became the turning point. Marriage would not simply bring you closer. It would make your soulmate's choice unmistakable. And once that choice became permanent, the third party understood that their influence over the connection could disappear, but the hidden result exposed an even bigger contradiction. Your soulmate had been encouraged to believe that moving away from you would eventually bring clarity, yet the opposite happened. The longer the distance lasted, the clearer certain feelings became. Don't skip now, because this realization surprised even your soulmate. They expected memories of you to become quieter. Instead, they began noticing how often they mentally returned to you whenever they imagined important moments in their future. A celebration. A new beginning. A difficult decision. A peaceful evening after everything finally settled down. Somehow, you kept appearing inside those pictures. And that was when your soulmate understood the difference between missing somebody and recognizing somebody's place in your life. Something huge is waiting for you. They were not simply remembering the past, they were questioning why their imagined future still contained you. Then another detail surfaced. Your soulmate remembered that the third party had repeatedly encouraged them to focus on everything that could go wrong with you, but rarely asked what had actually gone right. Once your soulmate reversed that pattern and remembered the connection without focusing only on its hardest moments, the picture changed dramatically. They remembered laughter nobody else understood, conversations that stayed with them afterward, and the strange sense that even silence between you carried meaning. Suddenly, the separation no longer felt like the final answer. It felt like an unfinished question, and that unfinished question has now brought your soulmate closer to the reason everything happened. Stay till the end, because the most surprising part is not what the third party did, it is what your soulmate is preparing to understand about themselves. They have realized that nobody could have created so much uncertainty unless there was something powerful enough to threaten the existing situation in the first place. Your connection mattered. The possibility of commitment mattered. And the thought of your soulmate choosing you mattered enough that someone began reacting before any final decision had even been made. Don't skip, because your soulmate has now remembered one final detail from that hidden conversation. After admitting they could imagine a permanent future with you, they said something else, something the third party never expected to hear. Your soulmate admitted that even if circumstances pulled you apart temporarily, they believed there were certain connections people eventually found their way back to once they understood what truly mattered. Those words were spoken before the separation. Now, after everything that happened, they sound almost like a prediction. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate is beginning to wonder whether the separation was never the end of this connection at all. Perhaps it was the experience that finally forced them to distinguish outside influence from their own truth. And the next realization, the one connected to what you're